Hey everyone, welcome to the Capital City Bourbon Show. This is your host Luke, and I'm here with my co-hosts Alex and John. We're thrilled to be here with you all today, so grab yourself a glass of whiskey and come join us on the porch. Hey everyone, welcome back out to the porch. It is another beautiful day here in Tallahassee, Florida, and we sure are excited to be out on the porch sharing drinks again. You know, I'm here with my good friends, John Hill and Alex Patel. How we doing, boys?
Doing well, thank you. John here.
We know you're there, John. So we're happy to be on the porch today, and you know, we're going to have some fun. We got a special guest with us this afternoon. And we're going to be tasting through some really good quality whiskey. It's all very interesting whiskey. It's very popular whiskey. And, you know, it's I think the first time we've had an opportunity to taste through a lot of different styles of whiskey. We have an American whiskey, a Canadian whiskey, a bourbon, a rye, and some high proof stuff, which you know we love. So we're excited to dive into that. We're thrilled to be joined today by the president of Preservation Brands, Scott Nelson. Scott, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Well, you sure did spoil us today, Scott, and you brought all this great whiskey out to the porch, and we're excited to dive into it. Before we do that, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started with Preservation?
Yeah, so I've been in the business for about 29 years, believe it or not. The only thing I know how to do is peddle whiskey and make it. So it's been a good run. And I've been at Preservation for a little over 2 years now. Before that, I was working at a distillery in Texas called Firestone and Robertson that was sold to Pernod. So kind of before that, was at Moet Hennessy for about 12 years. Then various other suppliers, Seagram, Diageo along the way, and started with a distributor in Florida. So been selling a lot of stuff, but always whiskey and bourbon has always been my favorite drink of choice, especially bourbon. So been collecting it and drinking it for a really long time. And when I was in Texas, I really got a good taste for the production side of it and messing around with barrels and putting blends together, and really kind of took it to the next level and moved to Kentucky, live in Bardstown now, which is awesome. And so every day I'm blending. I do all the blends here with our team. And then we have a really small bottling facility. So we do everything on site. We have about a 50,000 square foot warehouse where we store all of our barrels. Building a rick house on the property right now. Well, pretty soon we'll be working on that next. But yeah, we have some really fantastic brands to sell. Our owner, Marcy Palatella, has been in the business for a really long time. She's been a good friend of mine for a long time. And, you know, a little bit of history about the brands, Rare Perfection and Olde St and Wattie Boone, which I think we're going to taste all three today, have all been around since the mid 80s. And Marcy was producing these for the Japanese market back, you know, kind of when bourbon was taking a little bit of a decline in the late 80s, early 90s, kind of mid 90s. She still had a really robust business with Japan, and they have never stopped supporting bourbon and have been really, really loyal customers and fans of bourbon. And so she created these labels. There's some neat stuff in Julian Van Winkle's book, Pappy Land, about Marcy in there, how she kind of helped design some of the labels he worked with, some of the wine glass that's used, telling him to maybe think about using a rye in his collection of brands. So she's worked with some really interesting people. He did a lot of work for her. The Wills did a lot of work for her. And so now we brought it all back in house and we're doing it all ourselves. So it's a lot of fun.
Where was she making that whiskey she was selling to Japan?
Always in Kentucky. So she was using quite a bit of Old Stitzel juice, which is why there's such a kind of a sought after thing. And Julian had a lot of Old Stitzel juice, and Marcy was buying it for him. That was back when he was selling Old Rip 10 and Old Rip 12. She was selling that for him in Japan, and he was helping her get her brands off the ground. And so they've had a really good friendship. And yeah, he's been really influential with her and kind of vice versa. But it's always been made here in Kentucky.
Well, all of these brands we're going to talk about today are certainly sought after. I know, just being on social media and following the people I do, these are brands that we see popping up a lot, and people are always excited to get their hands on a bottle because I think they're all very unique. They're all gorgeous packages in their own right. And, I think that's a perfect segue to jump into this first one here. This first bottle we're going to talk about is one that, a lot of people have asked me about when I got my hands on a bottle and started posting pictures of it. And this is actually an American whiskey, and it's named after who I believe was the first master distiller in Kentucky. Is that right?
Correct.
And
there's a little bit of controversy about who the actual first distiller was. So there's a few names that circulate around here, but the folks in Bardstown tend to think it's Wattie Boone. So the story of Wattie Boone was he was a distiller who started his craft in Tennessee, made his way through the Cumberland Gap, and set up a distillery in Bardstown, almost where our distillery sits today on the Beach Fork River. And so we sort of wanted to recreate his journey with this product. So we had this distilled for us. It's a bourbon mash bill, distilled in Tennessee. The only reason why it's not called a bourbon is we took old barrels and we scraped them and refired them. And so the barrels have some age to them. And the thought of that process was that, when you have a new white oak charred barrel, there's a lot of green notes in that you have to work through, a lot of tannic acid and things. And so the thought was, back when these were done, was that this gets you closer to the wood sugars faster and makes a different tasting product. And so it was sort of an experimental project that Marcy went on. And so they're old barrels, scraped, refired, filled, and they were aged in our warehouse here in Kentucky. And so that was something that she wanted to make kind of representative of his journey. And so it's a really fine product. The only thing we do is dump the barrels and cut it with our RO water here at the distillery. And we cut it to 94.7, but that has some nice notes in it. It's got a lot of nice kind of toffee, vanilla, caramel notes that we like on the back of it. But it's an easy drinker. For us, it's a little bit lower proof. We're actually doing Wattie Boone barrel picks now, and these barrels being recharred and refired did not have very good yields. A lot of barrels, we only get maybe enough for 20 cases on a good barrel. Some are 2, some are 3, some are 5. And so the yields are very low, but we like the intensity of the product, and the proof is really high in some of those barrels as well, anywhere between low 120s to about 130.
Okay. But yeah, this is, I was surprised to hear it was a bourbon mash bill, just because on the nose, I don't get those traditional bourbon notes, but definitely as I start drinking it, it's got a really buttery texture up front, very smooth, got some nice sweet notes to it, but I definitely do get that rye character coming through.
Yeah. It's a little bit softer, a little bit more approachable, like me. On our bourbons, we try to, we use more wheated bourbon, probably than most people. And our ryes are a little bit softer too. And I think that's just sort of the kind of the house taste that we like to do here. So you won't ever taste anything from us that has a lot of, real rye punch coming out at you, especially even in our ryes. As we get into those, it's a little bit softer. So that's just sort of the way we like to make things around here.
Well, very easy drinking for sure. I mean, it's just very smooth. One sip to the next is not a challenge for me.
Yeah.
And it's a bourbon mash bill, you say?
Yes, sir. Bourbon mash bill with a rye bourbon mash bill. And actually, all the barrels are turned 9 years old. And so that's the release we have on that. We'll just keep selling that through that release, but we have some other things that we're going to launch with Wattie that'll probably end up going to a 10-year-old. We have a pretty sizable inventory on that, so we'll probably have enough to go through 10 years old, and then we're going to go back to something that's a little bit younger but has some nice age to it, and that'll be coming out next. So we'll have some great other things that'll be interesting for Wattie coming out in the next 2 years.
So
Thanks.
You mentioned the barrel pick program for this. When you're doing those barrel picks, are those going to be bottled at barrel proof, or are they going to be blended down as well?
No, they're all at cask strength. And the way we've been doing it through COVID is, it's been tough to get a lot of folks out to the distillery to do the barrel picks. So we've picked some really great barrels, and we've actually dumped them, and it's all at cask strength. And whatever the yield is, it is. So the first one we dumped was 2 cases, and it was really hot, and it was amazing. And so we sold that. And so that's what we've been doing, is just, which actually makes it a lot easier for a lot of the clubs and a lot of retailers, because they know exactly, how many bottles will come out of the barrel, what the proof is, the flavor, and they can plan a little bit better for what the ultimate cost will be for purchasing a barrel. So it's made it a lot bit easier. And on premise, we've taken some of those smaller yields and worked with some on premise partners, which has been really good for us too.
Well, as I've been drinking this here, I had a little water just on the side, and maybe this is just me. My palate's hasn't been tested yet today, but starting to pick up, more like stone fruit on the back end. Very subtle, maybe a little, dried citrus, which I think is very pleasant. Transitions well with that sweetness. I don't know. I could just be, I could be off today, but that's definitely a note I'm picking up.
Once I let this open up and swirl it around a little bit, you definitely get those softer notes of the caramel and toffee. But as soon as I sip it, it tastes, the rye characteristics do pull out with that curacao, that citrus twang on the back of the palate there.
Yeah, that curacao is a good way to describe that.
Yeah. It's funny that when we go through these barrels, we always try to find 3 things that I always look for. One is really good mouthfeel up front with a nice oily, texture. And it's through my years of doing this, if you don't have a really good start up front with that really nice viscosity and kind of mouth coat, you're not going to have a great finish. So we always try to find that in the barrels. We do usually 3-barrel batches. Then we're always looking for fruit characteristics, and you guys nailed it, because there's citrus in some and there's ripe red cherry in the others. It kind of goes one way or the other. And then we always look for something that it's hopefully going to give us a nice finish. And with bourbon, you definitely want some nice sweetness and a long sense of that. So it's always that, we always look for vanilla, toffee, caramel, some of those notes. And so that's really how we try to put these barrels together when we do a blend.
That's definitely an interesting drink. To go through and be able to taste those unique notes coming out at different stages of it opening up.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely progressed very nicely just in the few minutes we've been working with it here. Some whiskeys just kind of become stagnant, and you just get the same thing over and over again. And maybe that's fine for some occasions, but I like the pour to progress a little bit with time and open up a little and then continue to challenge you. And that was definitely pleasant.
Yeah, we definitely want that vibrancy in the mid palate with some fresh fruit that, it's alive and it comes at you, not just like a flat kind of a taste like you were saying. So we really try to work hard to make sure that everything plays well together. It doesn't go in the bottle. So,
well, that was a great whiskey to start with.
Nice easy start. Yeah.
Let's remind the listeners of what that one was.
So that was the Wattie Boone 9-year American whiskey. We're going to step it up a notch. We're going to go up about 13 proof points higher, and this is the very Olde St. 13-year. And this is a bourbon, 13-year-old, and this one we're at a 107.5, 53.75 ABV.
Yeah. So in this one, we're very fortunate that Marcy has some great relationships with some folks in Kentucky, especially around Bardstown, where we have some great relationships, and we're able to continue securing some old barrels. And so this one is a base of 13-year-old, but there's also 14 and 15-year-old in this. And we, again, do this in really small batches. So this particular blend you're drinking now has 1 barrel of wheated bourbon and it has 2 rye. And it is cask strength. And so the thing we like about this is we work at, when we kind of fill around the same level at our distillery as well, like that 108 to 110. And it's just my feeling that when you get something at cask strength that had that lower entry proof, you do get a lot more richness and a lot more flavor out of that. And that one has a lot of more baking spice in it. I know there's some cinnamon that comes through. A little bit more intense. There is a little bit of, there's still some decent rye spice in there as well. And then we like to, as it opens up, the very end of it does have some nice sweeter notes as well. But this one's a little bit more intense. And the barrels we're playing with here, there's a lot of different flavors that come out of these barrels too. One batch we kind of did was all like fresh strawberry. It was never tasted anything quite like it. And this one had more, I don't know, darker fruits. Cinnamon is the one thing that prevails quite a bit through there.
Yeah. I definitely get that light wheat nose on it, and once you drink it, it's nice and sweet, but I'm getting a nice cherry note, as the aftertaste. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, this is definitely, as I'm nosing it, a more traditional bourbon nose where I'm getting the dark stewed fruit, the oak from that age, kind of that musty oak.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that too, and that's kind of the one thing we always pay close attention to with these barrels through tasting quite a bit. Is just, you want to know there's the oak's in there, and you want to know you're drinking something with some age, but you just want to make sure it doesn't go over the edge of oakiness. So we always try to work really hard not to get too much of that in there, but you definitely know it's an older bourbon.
Yeah, and I would not say it's over oaked by any means. I mean, it's on the nose. I get that note, but as I'm drinking it, I don't get that prominent oak note, and I don't get tannins on the finish that a lot of times we'll find in an older product. I think the oak balance is definitely there.
I'll tell you this was 107 proof, you said? Yeah, for 107, I mean, it just rolls right through the tongue with minimal heat.
So did I hear you correctly that it's one barrel of wheated bourbon and 2 barrels of rye?
Yes, sir.
Wow. It's amazing.
Yeah, the wheat really had, it struck a nice balance because I get that rye character again, but you definitely do get sweet notes mixed in there. So it's not an overpowering rye, a heavy rye bourbon. I think that was, just from my perspective, tasting it, a nice balance, that 2-to-1 ratio to give those sweet notes, but still keep that rye character, which I always prefer as a bourbon drinker. I like rye. I like the spice that it adds. But wheat also has that great sweet profile that, blends so nicely. And I think that's a nice balance with this bourbon.
Yeah, we just try to get the most out of it that we can. And, our production's pretty small. So just trying to maximize the taste and flavors that we're able to work with. And so in playing around with it, we just really kind of like the way that came together. And so we're really kind of in really evaluating everything now that the heat's coming up now a little bit more. In Kentucky, it's been in the mid 70s and it was about 70 today. And so, the summers have so much of an impact on the flavor and the maturing of everything. The barrels that are sort of close, we're really paying close attention to them right now as they start to kind of come alive a little bit more and make sure that we don't go over that oak edge. That's kind of our main focus right now, is just making sure everything we like, we still love, and we want to let it keep going, or we want to do something with it pretty quick.
Where are you keeping these barrels now? You say you're building a warehouse?
We have a warehouse. Actually, it was an old distributor in Bardstown, and so it's not a traditional rick house, but it's a 50,000 square foot footprint in the back just for the barrel storage, and then we have a bottling facility in the front, and so it's really convenient for us. We dump in there, blend in there, and then just pump it through and do our bottling. So it's off-site. Unfortunately, our distillery is close to a neighborhood, and we were not able to do everything we wanted up front. We had to show our neighbors we would be good neighbors, and so I think as we've done a good job. I think they realize we're here, we're respectful of everything, and so I think we can put a low profile rick house in the back, and it'll kind of go well with the train and everything there. It won't be too much for them driving by every day. So, we're just trying to do the right thing by them. But we have a beautiful facility that can hold probably 20 to 24 4,000 barrels, depending on how we configure it. So we have good storage.
Yeah. And where is your distillery exactly? It's been a while since I've been to Bardstown. I don't think you were there when I was last there.
Yeah, we're if you're familiar with the Bluegrass Parkway,
Yes.
and where Barton is, if you just head towards the Bluegrass leaving Barton, it was an old place called Hillbilly Heaven. So a lot of beer and whiskey have been spilled on those floors, and a lot of cool entertainers have gone through there. And so we have we have 3 buildings there. A guest house where we welcome everyone, start our tours there and do tastings. And we have a still house where we do all of our stilling. We have 2 copper pot stills, 1,000-gallon pot stills, 16,000-gallon fermenters there that we work with. And then we have a event space that's about 10,000 square feet for weddings and events and things and tastings.
Is that on
Yeah,
Bardstown Highway at just before you get to the Parkway?
Yeah, right on the corner there, right? You kind of, if you're on the Parkway, you see us right driving by. So we're in a great spot.
I have seen it. Yeah, as you were building.
It's a traditional, we painted everything white. Looks a bit more like Napa, and Marcy's from the wine country. So it has a little bit of that influence. But yeah, it's a beautiful place. Really, really nice. Love to host you guys anytime.
Well, unfortunately, our last trip to Kentucky was canceled, which I'm still reeling over. But I have a few friends that have visited the distillery, and they said it was gorgeous. They loved everything about it. So I'm personally looking forward to getting up there, and hopefully I go on one of those days when you release that very old St. Nick 17 year, because that has eluded me to date, and I'm working on that.
There may be something coming your way that I didn't have a chance to send out yet, but because it wasn't bottled yet, but I didn't forget what you asked for. So,
by the way, this 13-year-old is excellent.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
I can see myself sitting drinking that with a cigar and spending a lot of time with it.
Life is good.
Well
yeah,
done.
When you have one of those in your hand, I enjoy it very much.
Yeah, I think so.
I was going to say, I really started craving a cigar all of a sudden, John. So that bourbon, I think, would pair well with just a nice cigar.
You might find one within reach, Luke.
Well, now my palate's warmed up, we got to step it up just a little bit. And we have a product. I have not had a chance to taste this one yet. And this is a rye, which is exciting to me. And the only thing that gets me more excited than a rye is a cast strength rye. And so this is the very old St. Nick Harvest Rye. And this one comes in at 118.8 proof. Scott, what can you tell us about this rye?
Yeah, so this is we have two kind of seasonal products. One is summer and one is harvest. And they're both kind of a little bit similar in style. I would say the summer is a little bit lighter. And again, we do 3-barrel batches on this. So the summer, we use 1 barrel of 51% rye, 2 barrels of 70% rye. That's kind of about what the recipe is. And the difference in the harvest rye is 2 barrels of 70 and then 1 barrel that's older and is a much higher percentage of rye, which they kind of vary. But that extra barrel gives it a really nice richness and a full flavor. And when you all were mentioning like the fruit and notes in this, we really like this one because there's a real nice prevalence of either it comes out sometime as almost like a green apple, almost like a malolactic feel you get from a wine, or it has a nice cherry. So as you're kind of like working it through your palate and kind of blowing some air and oxidizing a little bit, some of those nice fruit notes come out. The harvest is a touch more, I would say, bold. It's got a little bit more rye punch than the summer does, but it's not overwhelming because we don't use really high percentage rye in these blends. So the base of it is always going to be a 70% rye. And then we overlay it with some different barrels of varying ages. But all these have they're all about probably at least 5 years old. They all have at least 5 summers. I'm sure they're all 5 years at this point as well that we use for the blend. And we think that's a nice sweet spot for rye. I know when we talk about bourbons, I think, that 6 to 8 year is when you really see things start to happen with a great bourbon, and you start to, taste the age, the greenness has gone out of the barrel, and you're really starting to see what it holds for you. And we feel like that 5 to 7 year range in rye is sort of our sweet spot that we really like. And so that's kind of the year on this one and the characteristics. But this one has it's a little richer, fuller than the summer rye flavor, and this is actually one of my favorite products that we make.
So, I got a comment here about this. This is so aptly named Harvest Rye. So I'm from Michigan originally, born and raised. And Michigan is known for its apples. And you mentioned that green apple note. Well, this product from nose to finish reminds me of going to the big apple orchards up in Michigan and getting the fresh baked apple cider donuts with cinnamon sugar on top, because that completely embodies this whiskey in my mind. I get that green apple note from the nose through the finish. I get the spice. I get a few pops of sweet notes, but one of those cinnamon sugar apple donuts, that is this in a glass for me.
Yeah, and that's the thought. It's like harvest time, and yeah, I mean that's just sort of the feel we got when we were drinking it and trying to think of a name, and that's just sort of what we came up with. I'm not sure it's the best name, but it works for us, so we like it.
No problems. I have no problems with that name because that is spot on.
And it's probably around 118, that bottle you have.
Yeah, I think this is 118.8.
And that's just total cask strength. But I would say, you notice there's definitely the proof is there, but it's not really overwhelming proof as far as that. It's still enjoyable. So it's just the balance we try to strike with the mouthfeel, all the great flavors, and sort of the three parts we're always looking for. That this is one we always sort of use as a reference.
Funny enough, that American whiskey it tasted a little hotter than this.
Yeah, I drink a lot of high proof whiskey, so maybe I've been skewed a little bit, but this is again super easy drinking for me. I don't have a problem going one sip after the other. I don't get too much burn or wow, this is a hot whiskey. I can drink this very easily without having a problem. That's been a trend I've noticed as we've been tasting all these products. They are, despite their proof, all very easy drinking from 94 up to 118 now. And I mean, they're all extremely smooth, which is,
yeah. And that's really what we strive for, is to give, it's like preservation is our name. And so everything we do, we try to be conscious of really protecting what we're working with. And when we dump these barrels, honestly, we use Mr. Coffee filters a lot of times. And so the idea is just to get as much char and sediment as we can. Nothing we make is chill filtered. Once in a while, we use a press filter if there's a really a barrel with a ton of really fine char that we can't get out. But really, we use those filters, and we use a stainless steel catch, kind of another mesh filter that we use in the filler, and that's really it. So we want to use this as close to coming out of the barrel as we can, and the proof is really important to us. So we just want you to taste what we get to taste when it comes out of the barrel. That's really what we're kind of shooting for here.
What's the availability of this around the year?
All the stuff you're tasting is we have plenty of it. We're in 13 markets now. You all are in Florida. We were actually in Florida 2 weeks ago, working Jacksonville, Fernandina, St. Augustine, and then we're going to Tampa, St. Pete next week, and then South Florida after that. So Florida, we really want to make as a sort of a strategic market for us. I grew up in Florida. My daughter goes to FSU, so very, very near and dear to my heart. So
home girl.
Yeah.
Well, when you come to visit her, you certainly need to be able to find her whiskey here at Market Square.
We will do that, no doubt. But Florida is such an important market, and Florida's almost like 3 different states. South Florida is so different and a lot trendy. Central Florida is more kind of like almost Midwesterners, and then you guys are kind of like South Georgia. But the whiskey, the amount of whiskey enthusiasts in Florida, especially North Florida, is pretty awesome. I mean, there's a lot of great clubs, a lot of great folks that come visit us. And I sold Seagram, and we sold Crown, and it was always kind of like what North Florida did, and then the rest of Florida was kind of inconsequential because there were so many great whiskey drinkers in the North. It's just so different. And yeah, we want to spend a lot of time up there.
Yeah, we like to say the Bourbon Trail starts here in Tallahassee.
I think it does. Yeah, right into South Georgia.
Well, this, you know, I'm struggling with this next one because I'm a little biased. Rare Perfection is familiar to me, and I wanted to taste all these other three before I got to
All
Rare
right.
Perfection because I am biased about this product.
Let's get into it.
So this is the Rare Perfection 15-year-old that we're diving into now. The highest proof we're tasting
Yep.
today. This is 119 and change. So this is a big whiskey. And I'm gonna let my co-hosts talk more because, as I've said, I drank my way through a bottle of Rare Perfection, and I have feelings about it, and I'm just gonna sit here and warm up with this glass, and I'll let them talk more so I don't ruin everything.
Well, just to give you a little background on that. So Rare Perfection has always been about a great whiskey. So it could be a Japanese whiskey, it could be Irish, it could be a bourbon, it could be a rye. And so Marcy and I discovered these barrels, and they were stored in Canada. It was a special order that was a 4-grain bourbon mash bill. And so a company distilled it for her, and not for her, for the original customer in Canada. And so we discovered these barrels. And so we started drinking this, and I was like, what is this? I'd never tried anything like this in my life. And so we got into it, got some more samples, went, looked at it, and they were stored in a very first floor of a warehouse in Ontario. So we brought it back, and I said, I got to get into this more. Let's just play with this. And we both agreed. This was the first thing we produced for Rare Perfection that we did in-house. And so a lot of people are like, are you crazy? Canadians, you can do anything you want to it. There's no rules. People don't have any respect for Canadians. And I've always loved Canadians. I've had them for a long time. And so we got these barrels back, and I said, I just can't believe the crazy flavor that comes out of this. If you leave this stuff in a glass, it goes all over the place. And so we ended up bringing it back, and then we wanted to do something that was a little bit more approachable. So there's a 14-year-old too that we proofed down to 100.7, and it's got this crazy like key lime zest note on the nose, and it's creamy. It's nothing like that one. It's a little bit different. So we launched this at the Bourbon Festival in Bardstown 2 years ago. Was my first bourbon festival, and everyone's like, what the hell are you doing with a Canadian? And so I was trying to tell them the story, and everyone's like walking away, like giving me looks and stuff. But then they all started walking back saying, can I try that again? I said, yes. And so it received a double gold and best Canadian at San Francisco Wine and Spirits. And it was the Whiskey of the Year Breaking Bourbon in 2019. So we don't ever enter, the only thing we've ever entered is San Francisco. And so, yes, it's a Canadian with a 4-grain bourbon mash bill. It's crazy. It's not as hot as 119. And the only thing we do to this is dumped and put in a bottle. That's it. And everyone thinks that, it's this or it's that. And so it's just, I wanted to send it to you because I think it's cool. It's my favorite thing that we have, and I think whiskey collectors would really enjoy this because it's so different and it goes all over the place. So that's my 2 cents. What do you guys think?
It's 15 years old.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think it's the big boy of the ones that we've tasted so far. And I really, I mean, if this were quartet singing, this would be the bass singer. It's just loaded with those lower notes of almost molasses. I'm getting out of it, and that comes in a bit of a melody that it really has a good taste. Down here we have cane syrup, and I'm getting some of that on this. I think you found a very good whiskey up there. I don't quite understand 4 grain.
Well, it's got a 4-grain bourbon mash bill. So it is at a, I don't know the exact numbers, but I can say it's very high corn content. It's incredibly sweet. And so what I've been told is rye is the least prevalent grain in it. And, Canadian rye is always soft anyway. Nothing like, like a Kentucky rye or even in, Indiana or Tennessee rye. Much, much softer, approachable. And we actually have in our Olde St. Nick, 8-year-old, we use a Canadian rye that we love. That's just amazing. But this doesn't have a lot of the rye notes and things you'd expect from something from Canada at all. It's got a lot of sweetness, a lot of intensity. To your point, those low notes, and you taste the age, but it's not there's no hardly any oak, which is interesting.
This way, I'm feeling it. It's like a baked sugar, like a baklava or something, where it's sweet but not overpowering, and then the grain just completely rolls into it on the back end to just kind of balance it out. I mean, you're right. I don't think I've ever tried a mash bill that tasted anything like this one.
Yeah, the intensity is absolutely there, and I'm getting like a toasted marshmallow. I mean, it's a real toasted feel to the entire drink.
It's very unique. If I was going to sit somewhere and just drink something, it's going to be that one every time, because the longer you leave that in your glass, it takes you on a weird adventure, and different things come out as it oxidizes. It's pretty cool.
And you don't rush it.
No, I just enjoy it and sit there with a big glass of it and just have fun with it. But my friends come over and bourbon, guys like you all, I always pour it and just give it to them. They always look at me like I'm crazy. What the hell is this? And we always talk through it, and then they talk about their Canadian connection, and then eventually come around to it. So I just think it's the coolest thing we have in our portfolio right now.
I never met a Canadian I didn't like.
Exactly. Yeah. Great people.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. They're very nice, There's kind of like a toasted nuttiness, like a peanut butter type that's kind of coming out. I put 1 drop of water in there to help accelerate opening it up. And I mean, it definitely has like a peanut butter connotation to it. I mean, that's definitely interesting.
Where'd you get the water? I didn't know you had any.
I have some Hawaiian volcanic water sitting right next to me.
Did that come from Kentucky? I don't remember any volcanoes up there. So I got to chime in now, Scott, because I've been biting my tongue for about 5 minutes now. Rare Perfection, I have a couple bottles of it, the 14 and the 15. I have to tell you, I've labeled this several times as probably the most fun whiskey I have in my collection. And not to toot my own horn, but I have a pretty large collection, because this whiskey is just constantly changing and keeping me guessing. The mouthfeel is phenomenal. It's this viscous, unctuous whiskey that I can't quite figure out. I get this continual, toasted coconut note. And Alex, I think, you were mentioning like that toasted nut, peanut, but I get more of a coconut influence from it. Sometimes I get more fruity notes popping out. I've tried adding water. That's changed it a little bit, but I find this to be so much fun to drink because it is just constantly changing, and it just keeps you guessing. This is not a whiskey that you can just pinpoint and lock down and be like, oh, it's this, and this is my overall review. I've tasted it so many times, and I keep changing. I always love it because it is high proof. It's easy drinking. It's sweet. There's spicy notes there, but it is just such a unique whiskey to drink. And I'm getting ready to actually host a tasting here in town, and it's going to be a very small private tasting for some individuals, but I'm actually assuming I can get the authority to do so from the people paying for it. I'm going to feature this 15-year because I want people to experience this compared to bourbon and rye mash bills. I'm going to feature in the parts of the tasting because this is just so unique. And I think it's it perfectly exemplifies how just crazy whiskey can be and how out of the box it can be compared to what you think you know about whiskey.
Thank you. I thought you were going to say something totally different.
No, I've been a fan. I didn't want to send the wrong message. I'm a fan.
That's good. Well, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I think it's just it is really fun. And, for people that are just getting into whiskey and bourbon, it's kind of a good entree, because a lot of people look at like, oh my God, I can't drink over 80 proof. And, we get folks at the distillery all the time that never think they could drink anything like that hot or without a bunch of water in it. So I always bring them over and say, try this. It's really cool and different, and you'll really enjoy it. And then just sort of teach them how to drink it, work some air over their palate, and, get a little Kentucky chew going. And they really enjoy it. So it's fun for us to play with as well.
Challenging market, and you're talking about the new folks that are coming in, but then you go over to the Bourbon Festival there in Bardstown, and you're dealing with all these old hands, and so you're at that point you're trying to push in something that they're just not familiar with at all. And these old hands are, old hands, old brands, and I'm beginning to see them open up to many of these new experimentations, if for lack of a better word, and finding out that you guys and gals that are blending some damn good whiskeys and bringing in some things like that are hitting the mark. And no matter how long you've been coming there and sitting on the porch behind whatever motel, waiting for someone to come up and offer you something new, eventually they embrace you. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, I think if you come being humble as we are, and you try to do something, put your heart into it and do it right, and it has to be something a little bit, something different. Our stuff's definitely not cheap, and being small has some advantages, but probably more disadvantages. And so for us, we don't have the same luxuries, just having these huge lots of amazing product to choose from. And the big guys are putting out so many great products that are they're amazingly consistent and great. And so for us, we've got to work extra hard, find the best stuff we have, and really be thoughtful about what we're putting in the bottle, because if you put one bad thing out there, it can kind of ruin you. And that's always in the back of your mind, unfortunately. So we're always just trying to make sure and taste to make sure that, what we're doing is right. And, that we can go toe to toe with some of the, the big distillers out there and just offer something that's unique and different and fun. And bourbon, that's what it's all about, is, finding some buddies and some good friends and sitting around and drinking something new and telling some stories and talking about the stuff you love in this whiskey and the stuff you maybe you're not so fond of. But there aren't many bad ones out there really at all. That just, hopefully you can make something that's unique and stands out a little bit from the crowd. It's confusing when you walk into a liquor store anymore. It's kind of what the flavored vodka shelves were like 5-10 years ago, where you'd walk in and there was a sea of flavored vodkas, and now all of a sudden that section has shrunk down to like 4 feet, and it's all Tito's. And now you go in the whiskey section, and these big stores, it's massive, and there's so many things in there that can be confusing. And so packaging's important, price point's important, but ultimately, if you have it in the bottle, generally you'll be okay.
How's it working out for you? Well, how do you feel now, 2 or 3 years later?
Yeah, it's good. I'm just excited to say that the stuff we're making on site is really close, and I hope we can release a rye later this year. It'll be a little over 3 years old. It tastes great. Everything we do is pot distilled, so that richness, that mouthfeel, the oiliness, viscosity, I think we get a little bit more of that, and that really comes through in our White Dog and our process. So we're working really hard on that. So once we can get some of our own stuff out there, I think that'll be even more exciting to show them what we're making. I mean, we're great blenders and we're able to source some good stuff. But yeah, we've been doing really well. And once our stuff comes online, I think it's going to be really exciting for all of us.
Right.
So, John, Alex, I got to ask you guys, we've been sitting out on the porch here drinking all this whiskey. We've had American, Canadian, rye, bourbon. What was your favorite that we tasted today?
Probably that 15 year.
Going Canadian, huh?
Yeah, we're gonna go Canadian. We'll give the Canadians a W.
I'm, in terms of picking a favorite, I really enjoyed the 13-year-old. I really enjoyed the Olde St. Nick. What is that? The rye, the Harvest Rye. I mean, I can see depending on my mood, I can really see myself picking that up. And the Rare Perfection, I agree with all of you guys that that one has the richness that I would enjoy as well. And frankly, we started off. I think with a great whiskey as well. I think you've done such a good job of blending these, and it's so out of the box. I mean, what are we talking about? One barrel of peated bourbon with 2 ryes. I mean, who does that? And it's a delicious taste. Rare Perfection. That's a long way of saying that's my favorite.
Thank you.
So I'm surprised. We don't often get a consensus on the porch, but I was trying to hold back before I threw my weight behind the Rare Perfection, but it looks like all 3 of us just preferred the Canadian today.
Awesome.
It's just such a unique drinking experience, and I mean, just like you said, there's so many different SKUs out there, and there's so many different flavor profiles and things that mash bills and various blends have to offer nowadays. I mean, it's just exciting to see where it can take your palate.
Yeah.
Some good stuff.
Those bottles are going fast. I'm a little concerned at this point.
There'll be some more coming. Don't worry. I'll
better hide them from
I'm not going to let
myself.
my brothers in Florida run dry.
Oh, Scott, you are a good man. You're taking too good a care of us down here.
No, all good. And again, I'll be there to have a cocktail with you guys in person, hopefully sooner than later.
Absolutely. We'd love to have you at the lounge over there at Market Square and show you some stuff we're doing.
You make it up here, everything's opening up again. And it's, the weather's great. So come and see us here as well.
Well, we're going to invite you down because you know what? The Seminoles are going to have a football team this year. And
yes.
We're looking forward to that finally.
Me too.
It's been too long.
I know.
Believe it when I see it.
Oh, John, don't be negative. Come on. Norvell's cooking up some good things for us right now.
John, you better get on that direct line and give him a call. Give him some high horse motivation or something.
And not getting it from me. I'm in the watch and see or wait and see mode.
Well, listen, how about you tell him we'll bring him some Rare Perfection 15, and if that doesn't incentivize him, I don't know what will.
Absolutely.
Right.
All right, Scott. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We were so happy to share this whiskey with you. We're so fortunate that you were willing to bring it for us and just tell us all about it. We understand why you're having so much success and why these products are flying off the shelves. So this was a really great experience, and we can't wait to come visit in Kentucky soon.
Thanks, guys. Really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
All right.
Cheers.
Cheers. Hey everyone, thanks again for tuning in to the Capital City Bourbon Show. We have more great episodes planned for you in the future, so come back and join us on the porch. Cheers, y'all.